Hi, welcome to tips number 16 through 20 of the 20 Essential Photoshop Elements tips. I'm Rick Peterson from EssentialPhotoshopElements.com. Let's dive right into tip number 16, which is change fonts fast by highlighting the name and then typing the first two letters of the new font. Let's go over to Elements and see how this works. So let's click on the Type tool, and it shows up in the options bar in the first field. It shows the currently active font, which is Kelowna MT. Let's say I want to use a different font. You can click on this little arrow just to the right of the font name, and it displays all the fonts that are available to you. And let's say I want to use Verdana. So I would scroll through all this and then go down and choose Verdana, and then when I start typing it would type in the Verdana font. But this tip shows you a quicker way to do that. Let's go back and choose our Kelowna MT, and instead of opening that list and scrolling through it, all I have to do is click once inside of the font field and then type the first two letters of the font I want, so VE, and it immediately goes to Verdana. Even if there was another font that began with VE other than Verdana, it would get me close enough so that then I could use my arrow and just choose the font, because I would be right in that area because they're listed alphabetically. The next tip also has to do with fonts. It's tip number 17, and it is change font size of a text layer by using free transform from the image menu. Let's see how that works in Elements. Let me just make sure I have my type tool selected, which I do, and I'm going to click and type something. Let's just type red roses. And now if I wanted to change the size of that type, I could click and drag my mouse over the type to select it, and then choose a different font size up in the options bar, or I could click on the size and type in a size. So if I type 200, then it gets really big. But it's kind of hard to know exactly what size is going to work for the area that you want to use the type in. Here's another way you can do it. Whenever you create some type with the type tool, it puts it on a new layer. So let me bring our layers panel over here to show you. Here's the new layer that was created, and it has the same name of whatever you typed in there. I want to change the size, so what you can do is make sure you have that layer active by clicking on it, and then go up to the image menu and choose transform free transform, and it puts this bounding box around your type. Now I can click and drag on any of the corners and it will make the type bigger, or I can grab the type and move it. If I grab any of the four corners and go in or out, it keeps the type proportional. But if I grab one of these center points, like the top one here, and I drag down, it will actually squish the type. Or if I grab one of the side center points and pull in, it squishes it together that way. So the corners will keep it proportionate and the center ones will squish it, or if I drag out, it will actually make the type, really tall or really spread out. So it really gives you a more interactive control of your type. And then once you're happy with it, not happy with this actually, so I'm gonna reduce it down. Once you get what you want, you can just click on the green check mark and your bounding box will go away, and you'll have your type the way you want it and in the spot that you want it. For our next tip, we'll get away from the type tool and look at a feature you can use for all tools. It's tip number 18. And tip number 18 is get helpful info on any tool by hovering over a tool and click on its name. So back over in Elements, if we go to the toolbox and you hover your mouse over any of the tools without pushing down the mouse button, it will show you the name of the tool and the keyboard shortcut in parentheses. You can move your mouse over the name that it displays, and you can see that your cursor turns into a pointing finger. And if you click on that, it brings you to Adobe Help and right to the help page for that tool. Here it tells us about moving a selection by using the Move tool. So let's go back into Element and let's try the Type tool. Just click on it and it talks about adding text. This is a great way to get familiar with the various tools. It's always right there when you need it. Now let's go to the next tip, which is tip number 19. Tip number 19 is change the size of your brush with keyboard shortcuts, either the bracket keys or by holding Alt and Control in Windows or Option and Control on a Mac. I'll show you how that works inside of Elements. So let's go to the toolbox and select our brush tool, and I'll bring it out over on my photo so we can see it. And you can see that the cursor shows a round circle, which is representative of the size brush that I have. And if you look up in the options bar, you can see there's a size field, and right now it says 150, and I can click on this little arrow and it gives me a slider which I can slide up or down to change the size of my brush. So if I go down to 50, now you can see that my cursor indicates a smaller size brush. But there's a quicker, more intuitive way. Actually, a couple of ways. The first way is to use the left and right bracket keys on your keyboard. They're located right next to the letter P on your keyboard. Each time you press the left bracket key, your brush gets 10 pixels smaller, and each time you press the right bracket key, your brush gets 10 pixels larger. I'll press the right bracket key, 1, 2, 3, and it's getting larger. You can look up in the options bar in the size box, and you can see that it's getting larger. After it gets in the hundreds, then it goes in 100 pixel increments. Before that, it goes in 10 pixel increments. Left bracket makes it smaller, right bracket key makes it larger. The second shortcut for changing brush size is to hold down the Control and Alt keys in Windows, or if you're on a Mac, it would be the Control Option keys. I'm going to hold down the Control Option key on my Mac, and now as I drag to the right, my brush gets larger. As I drag to the left, it gets smaller. And then when I let go, that's the size I have, and it's actually more interactive because you can watch your, it's just a quicker way to get to the size that you want. And it works for most tools that display your cursor as a circle. So that includes the healing and spot healing brushes, the pattern stamp tool, the smart brush, the blur tools, the sponge tool, and even the quick selection tool. Get used to using this tip for resizing brushes and other tools, and you'll be working super efficiently. Well, we've come to the last tip in the 20 Essential Photoshop Elements Tips video series, and appropriately, it has to do with something you do at the end of a Photoshop Elements session, and that is close your Photos windows. So tip number 20 is close all your open photos by holding down the Alt or Option key on a Mac as you click the close box. Let's go over to Elements and see how that works. So here we are in Elements, and you can see in my project bin that I have 6 different photos open, and the one that's active in the window work area right now is this winery JPEG. If I were to click on this close box, it would close that one, and then I could go to my next tab and click on that X to close that one, and so on for all 6 of them. But I can close all of them with one click, if when I click on that X, I hold down the Option key on a Mac or the Alt key in Windows. So let me do that. Okay, you can see I got a dialog box here. It began closing all the windows, and if you look in the project bin now, you can see there's still 3 photos open, but I've made some changes to at least one of these photos because it stopped me with this dialog box, and it says save changes to Adobe Photoshop Elements document reddoor.jpg before closing. And if you don't remember what changes you made, you can always stop the window closing operation and make the dialog box go away by clicking on the escape key. I don't remember what changes I made to this photo or if I want to keep those changes. Just press the escape key, which I'll do now, and the dialog box disappears, and then I could further investigate whether I made any changes. Maybe I have some layers or whatever. I don't in this case, but I'm just saying that you can check your photos over to see, kind of determine what you did. Another thing you can do is go up to your window menu and choose the Undo History palette. Let me drag that up here, and that will show you what changes you made. So I can see, oh, okay, I made a spot healing brush change, so I must have cleaned something up, which is fine. So now I'm just going to go and hold down the Option or Alt key again and click on that X, and I'm just going to say don't save. And here it comes to another one, so I could go through that same process again, but for our purposes here, I'm just going to say don't save. And that's it. All the photos are closed now. So it's a lot quicker than going to each one and clicking the close box. And that concludes the 20 Essential Photoshop Elements Tips series. I hope you learned some new tricks that you can use inside of Elements. Keep your cheat sheets handy and practice using these, and they will soon become automatic and you'll be working like a pro. Watch your inbox for other useful Photoshop Elements information, which I will send you occasionally. Thanks for watching. This is Rick Peterson from EssentialPhotoshopElements.com saying take care.